Hey there, this is Perch, and this is going to be, let's see, how do I want to tackle this topic? Obviously, I always wonder. So, if you click on the video link, you're getting the title, you're getting a little description. I post to Twitter, kind of a little bit of here's what you're going to get. So, you're never coming in cold. It's not like you're clicking in the video and it's like, oh, what's he going to talk about? I don't know. And then I introduce it. I feel like I'm saved a lot of time by some of these title mechanics that I can just get right to it. But the question has come up a few times, and it's something I've thought about too, which is, in terms of politics and comics, are comics naturally left leaning because they rely so heavily on the art and writing community? And I mean, the short answer is yes, they are naturally going to lean in that direction. And and I think you can rage against that. You can object to it. You can be upset by it. You can be whatever you want to be. But the reality is, the creative community, meaning the art community, the writing community, the creative writing community, whatever, it naturally skews left in terms of politics. And for those of you keeping track at home, I mean, you don't know me from a hole in the wall. I am neither. I'm, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm independent. I'm neither right nor left. I'm independent." But they really don't mean that. They actually tend to skew one direction or the other. I'm pretty much I am what I'm billed as. I am pretty independent because it's not a middle of the road position. It's a I have equal irritation with both the right and the left in different ways, and that's my own personal bias that I bring to the table. Everybody has bias. I think the mark of self confidence and sanity is when you can admit your bias. But comics are naturally left leaning. The art community is naturally left leaning, and there's a bunch of you could really kind of get into the psychology and the philosophy around that. The art communities tend to be lower paid, so they're more reliant on social services. The art communities also tend to be more progressive, so they're more into kind of experimentation in terms of politics and ideologies, which tends to be a little bit more left leaning. So there's a bunch of reasons why the arts tend to be more left. And I think if you go to its very basic kind of stereotypes, right leaning tends to be more military, more foundation, more platform, and left tends to be more art, more free, more experimental. Those are general rule of thumbs, and not there's plenty. I know plenty of Republican artists, right wing writers, and creative types, and so you can't boil the entire world down into left and right with generalities like that. But comics do lean left, and I think one of the odd things that's happened over the last oh I don't know 2 or 3 years in comics, and if you want to get to Comics Gate and different other things, it's that this kind of idea of like, well, comics needs to have 50% Republicans and 50% Democrats. It needs to be equal. And, on one level, that whole premise is impossible. You're not going to get an equal kind of split of ideologies in comics. At the end of the day, and maybe this is kind of speaks to my own personal ideology, I believe that any vertical, any business, any kind of product needs to be somewhat agnostic to politics. The guiding force needs to be business. It needs to be profit. It needs to be, in its most raw sense, kind of capitalistic. You're going to create something for money, and then you want to create things that are financially sound so you can continue to get money that gives you the ability to keep creating things. So I think a lot of businesses should be fairly apolitical in the sense that their primary goal is to make money. Churches, political institutions, whatever, social programs, public services, those are ones that can become more political, can become more ideology based because they naturally lean that way. But things that are businesses that are out to make money need to be more agnostic. That's my philosophy. Now, again, as I said, my philosophy doesn't align to the arts. The arts skews left, just like if I was a military contractor, military contracts skew right. So, you have to play ball in the field you're in. So, all that said, I think that, there are a lot of comics out there, there are a lot of stories out there, and they're going to take a left wing perspective. And so, therefore, if you're on the right, you tend to have more of a feeling that comics are not for you, that you're, you're not in alignment with a lot of the comics that are being produced. And if you're heavily religious or you're more right leaning, you are going to have this feeling there's going to be fewer comics for you, because the reality is there's fewer creators, there's fewer people in the business that are aligned with your ideology. Fewer shouldn't mean zero. I do, and again, I say that from the perspective of, if you are trying to make money and you are a business, you should appeal to left wing, right wing, zero wing. You should appeal to all of those different things, because that's the safest way for you to make money. If you appeal to just one audience, one demographic, one uh, group, then you're hampering your ability to make money. So you have a choice to make. If you're an independent comic creator and you want to sell, say, 5,000 comics a month, then you can pick kind of the ideology that you want to go after, and you could speak to it very directly. I think that's what's made things like Paper Girls and Saga and some of the independent books, Wicked and the Divine, some of these books very, very popular, because they've picked their demographic and they're targeting it with a laser focus. They're speaking to that market. That's much the same way as J.J. Abrams, when he did The Force Awakens, he made a Star Wars story that was directly targeting nostalgia and that Star Wars market, and it made a ton of money. And then Rian Johnson came along with The Last Jedi and wanted to take the franchise in a new direction, and that was, it made money. It was still Star Wars and everything else, but those are two very different approaches. Abrams was going for, I want to say, a safe bet, but he was going for a market he understood. He targeted, he went after it. And Rian Johnson went after a different market, and he wasn't sure if that market existed or not. He was banking on the fact that Star Wars as a platform was going to make money regardless, but he was going after something new. Now, time will tell. I mean, even though there's a lot of feelings about Star Wars, Abrams Star Wars versus Johnson Star Wars, even though there's a lot of opinions on the topic, we're still a good 5 to 10 years away from really understanding which was the better move. Now, my bet personally is that Abrams and nostalgia driven Star Wars is going to be the smarter play from a business perspective than Johnson. But, again, it's that time will tell. It's too early to kind of weigh on that. So the same thing kind of goes with politics. I think if you made comics that were kind of really, for lack of a better word, really right wing based, your target audience is probably, now definite knock on wood, probably smaller than if you went to a left wing base, simply because your available market is larger from the people wanting to consume comics on the left wing. Now, the counter argument to that is a lot of these comic characters, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, etc., they're very, they're old legacy characters that have a lot of built-in fan base and built-in audience, many of who have aged. And one of the other kind of stereotypes or, tribal wisdom kind of things is that uh, though, people who age tend to move more right politically, right wing, I should say, not right, but they tend to move to the right. So therefore, if your comic is Spider-Man, and you know that Spider-Man has a built-in audience, and it tends to be an aging audience, then going hard left wing is probably going to isolate parts of your fan base. So you might not want to do that. You might want to take a more middle of the road approach. It's not to say you want to go right wing. You don't have, Spider-Man suddenly, becoming deeply religious and, going on pro-life rallies. You don't want to do that, but it means you need to understand your audience. And I think at the end of the day, whether you're right wing, left wing, whatever you happen to be, the key to business success is knowing your market and knowing your audience, and then placing the best bet you can. Like I said, if your goal is to sell 5,000 copies of a comic, then doing what Paper Girls does, what Brian K. Vaughan does, is smart. You're speaking to an audience, you're getting that audience, you're satisfying them, and you're making your money, and you're happy. You've made the business model work for you. But if your business model is to sell, 80,000 copies, 100,000, 200,000 copies, you're going to have to take a different approach. And that doesn't mean skew right or left. It means you've got to find kind of this balance between the two. So I hope this makes sense. I think the whole idea of left wing, right wing comics, kind of how they all kind of align, it's a dodgy subject, because at the end of the day, business is king. It really doesn't matter what your ideology is. If you're not meeting your business needs, if you're not meeting your market, you're going to fail. So the right answer is be clever about your market, understand your customer extremely well, and market to them. That's the way you achieve success. If you can achieve success going hard left or hard right, do it. Go for it. At the end of the day, if you're Ethan Van Sciver and you're doing your Cyberfrog comic, and you're crowdfunding to a audience that you have curated online, then yeah, play up the pro Trump, play up the right wing kind of audience, because that is your market. Those are the people who are subscribed to your channel, who are following you on Twitter, who are giving you money. Understand who's giving you money and give them things that will get them to keep giving you money. That makes, I mean, it's not that that's common sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's common sense. Anyone with a brain will understand that. So that's definitely the market to go after. If tomorrow Ethan Van Sciver signs with Marvel, and they want Van Sciver to do I don't know, pick your title, Fantastic Four, then the approach that Ethan uses to attract his audience for Cyberfrog, it needs to change to attract an audience that is more broad to meet the needs of Marvel and Fantastic Four. He will need to change his approach. If Ethan doesn't want to change his approach, he should stick to Cyberfrog. And if you're Ethan and you can make, whatever he made in the end, what, $800,000? If you can make, close to $1 million doing Cyberfrog, then do Cyberfrog. I mean, for God's sake. And if you're somebody else in the industry, if you're Pat Zurcher, if you're, one of these guys who's, really bitter about that, look, you have a choice. You can figure out the audience that's going to buy your work, and you can market to them and sell to them. And you got to make sure that market has money. Or you can work for one of the publishers and kind of, align to what they make. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about choices. If you're lucky enough in life that you can take your ideology, your politics, and you can merge it with your work and you can make big money out of it, then good for you. You're living an aligned, strong, healthy life. Good for you. But the only place people kind of get bent around the corner on is when they're trying to, play to their ideology, and they're working in a business that does not correspond with that, and then it goes haywire. Then that's where they tend to self-destruct and do poor. But I don't know. I've discussed a bunch of things here. I hope. Did you get something out of this? Did this answer some questions? Do I think comics are left leaning? Yeah. I mean, I don't just think it. I know it. It's obvious. They obviously are. The market is, the audience is, the talent is, and that's not a bad thing. It is what it is. It's like saying the sky is blue, the grass is green. That's reality. And if you are a Republican, if you're right leaning, and you want to make it in this market, then you got to find your angle. That's all there is to it. You got to find your entry point, your way in, and either you will or you won't. It's really up to you. Life is about choices. So, hey, what do you think? Leave me some comments. How do you feel about politics, not politics in comics, but politics behind comics. What do you think? What do you see? And where do you think the market can go? Am I too pragmatic for my own good? What do you think? Hey, like, subscribe, tell a friend, click the bell for notification. Thank you very much for listening, and come back real soon.